Hello, I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J Moore Living. And if this is your first time tuning in, I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a very frustrated baker. We thank you for tuning in. And I want to remind people that our shows are archived. So if you missed like last week's show, Christina Perello, who has Christina Cooks on PBS and is Emmy Award winner, was our guest last week. So check back in the archives on Facebook and jmoreliving.com. Today we are talking lobster. Let's see, there we go. Okay, which is my favorite thing. And you can see I'm down with it. My lobster pen, all in today. Today's guest is Chef Alison Barshak, who is a James Beard nominee for Best Chef in the Mid-Atlantic. She was the opening chef at the very renowned Striped Bass restaurant, which is a seafood restaurant in Philadelphia. And Esquire magazine stated it was the best new restaurant in the country for that year. It was back in 1994, but just a reminder to all of you. So let's bring in my lobster guru. There she is, Allison. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Dara.
Hi. You now own and have developed a patent for frozen lobster tails that go right from the freezer into the microwave and cooked in 3 minutes.
Yes.
The company's called Absolutely Lobster.
Yes.
I had it. Juicy, tender, moist, wonderful. Why don't we tell people, or you tell people, about Absolutely Lobster and the process and why it's so juicy and why regular frozen lobster tails aren't?
So I'm from the Northeast, and I never ate frozen lobster until I moved to Atlanta. And everybody that doesn't live in, well, most people that don't live in the Northeast have to eat lobster that's frozen because that's the only way you can get it, unless you're buying it live. So I tasted it and I just thought it does not taste like I know lobster should be tasting. I was no longer a restaurant chef. I was a home cook. And I said, there has to be a better way. There has to be an easier way to do this. And so I figured it out. And at the time I was working at a seafood company doing R&D and coming up with ideas for them. And I decided that I would file a patent for it because I wanted to protect the process and be able to manufacture it. And what I discovered was that everybody buys lobster tails that's processed the same way. They're usually brine frozen, which means they're put in salt water, and then they're blast frozen and they're coated with a glaze. So every lobster tail in the marketplace, you have to thaw it. And when you thaw it, you lose all the juices. And if you think about eating seafood, when you eat steamed clams, when you eat steamed mussels, there's broth, but there's no broth with lobster. So you're losing the broth when you thaw the tail. And what my process does is we split the tail from fresh and we pack it with a special butter. We put it in a special pouch that's microwave safe and we freeze it. And then the consumer cooks it from frozen in 3 minutes. And what happens is microwaves don't cook food. They excite water molecules. And it retains all the natural juices of the lobster, and you get all that lobster yumminess.
Well, I had that lobster yumminess, and to people, Allison and I talked a little bit beforehand. I am a lobster free. So the first lobster tail I did, I put that little gash over the butter pad, which is non-GMO, and let's talk about it, the sustainability of the product. But okay, so I did that and I put it in the microwave, 3 minutes, pulled it out, let it sit for a little bit, cut off the plastic, took out the lobster tail. So the lobster tail, succulent, just wonderful. But the butter, oh my God.
Yeah.
essence is in that butter and just delicious. What are your suggestions with using Absolutely Lobster? They finished the lobster, they've taken the meat out of the split shell. What are different ways to use that lobster?
Well, I feel like you should definitely have some bread to sop up the juices over pasta. The thing, you're making your own broth. So if you want to put it on top of risotto. And the other thing is, I use a scissors to cut, I pull the meat out of the tail, it comes right out. And then I don't use a knife, I just use a scissors to cut it into pieces. So you don't even need a cutting board, it's so simple. I put it on top of a toast. I put it on anything I'm eating at the time. If you want to do a surf and turf.
Or lobster roll.
Yeah, definitely a lobster roll. Definitely a lobster roll. I do it on top of risotto, on top of pasta. And I know you'll find this hard to believe, but if you don't eat the lobster, you put it in the refrigerator and you eat it the next day and it's just as juicy and you can just heat it up because you haven't lost any of the juices. So, I think you should just drink the broth or just make sure you sop it up with some bread.
Well, that's what I did. So, with you, when was that aha moment? You were up in Philadelphia. You were at Striped Bass for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
You had 3 restaurants, all named Allison in one form or another. They were all seafood.
Pretty much. Striped Bass was all seafood. And then when I opened my own restaurants, I did, at lunch, we had a chicken dish because I make a really great Caesar salad. So we had to have a chicken Caesar. But, people really want seafood. And I don't know, it's just something that I think I gravitated towards. It's something I'm good at. And, people, I would have one meat item on the menu. Maybe it was lamb or it was a hanger steak or something like that. But I love seafood. I think it's interesting. I think it's varied. I think it can be local. And I think it's hard for the consumer to buy seafood the way a restaurant buys it. So my aha moment came when I was a chef and Neil Stein called me and said, they wanted to interview me for this position. And I said at the interview, I know a little bit about seafood, but I guess I have to learn more. And I paid for myself to take a course at CIA in Hyde Park, a 3-day course. And then I would just go to the fish market every day and I read everything I could. And I just sort of taught myself all about seafood. So that's how it happened.
Well, I think in reading up, your parents, your father, for those who don't know, this show is based in Baltimore, that Allison's father's family, the Ginsbergs,
Yes.
were from Baltimore, and he spent time as a young child in and out of Baltimore, Crab Feast, Bow Brooks. We've gone through all that.
Yep.
But your parents did not want you to go to culinary school.
No, they said no. My dad said no. You're going to college, and I was not happy about that. So, my dad met my mom because he went to University of Pennsylvania and went to Wharton, and he met my mom in Philadelphia. So he ended up staying in Philadelphia. Education was really important to them. And they just didn't see culinary school or working in kitchens as a profession or something that they just didn't see it. And back then, it really wasn't a profession for women.
Right.
But I don't know. I just started working in kitchens, and that was it. I worked in kitchens in between in the summers. I worked in kitchens after I got out of school. And I just never stopped. And I loved it. And it was just great.
Well, I think the interesting thing in becoming executive chef at Striped Bass, which was a seafood restaurant, you really hadn't cooked finned seafood. You hadn't cooked fish.
I cooked a little bit, but not in the same way that I did there, which you're absolutely right. You know, most chefs, it's shrimp, it's frozen shrimp, it's, you know, scallops and, you know, learning about the fin fish, learning about where it comes from, how to buy it, how to prepare it. You know, that was really interesting to me. And taking that course at CIA was huge. I felt like I'd gone to camp. I was so excited. My chef instructor was just amazing.
A long time ago, when I ran cooking classes in the restaurants, there were people that belonged to, quote, the Epicurean Club.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided I was going to run a specialty class at CIA. I got in, lined it up, and it was about 10 of us. And we went up over, it was Columbus Day weekend, so we spent 4 days there. And I lived on campus.
Uh-huh.
What an experience. You
Yep.
know, we were at 7 a.m. into the main cafeteria. Our chef, whose name was, I swear to God, Chef Pate. And he worked with us. And just to be able to go to the cupboard and say, well, I need fish stock. And, you know, in 5 minutes, the fish stock is there and all these things were there. But what a wonderful thing. And then they have a lot of continuing courses. So if anybody's interested, you can reach out to the CIA, but I set that up. But you can go in and take these courses. And it's much more right now as to what they're offering. Mm-hmm. I think at that time it was 2 years when we were down there. So now I think it's the full range. Let's see.
But I just want to say to you that, you know, there's the seafood world. There are 250 varieties of snapper. So it's just so vast. I mean, there's just so much to offer. So it's really an interesting protein to use.
Well, I wanted to ask you, why cold water lobster like Maine instead of warm weather lobster like down in the Caribbean?
Well, when I started this process, there was, I mean, a long time ago, and I don't know the exact date, they didn't process lobster. They didn't take it apart in Maine or Massachusetts. It was against the law. They would send all the lobster to Canada over the border where they would process it and then send it back to the United States. And I think it was probably around 2010 that started changing. So that's why you see like lobster roll places and more what they call value-added lobster. And there was a glut of lobster and the price dropped. And the lobstermen and women weren't able to make the amount of money that they should be making. So originally, my idea was to help them with this process where it's an easy process and they could possibly make more money from processing their own lobsters. So for me, it was about the connection and the lobster that I was using. You know, that's why. And I enjoy the cold water lobster, and it's more prevalent. So that's kind of why I was doing it.
I have a comment here. The question is, I should ask you if you could let me run wild in your warehouse as long as you have a microwave that I can use.
Well, I just want to say that we don't have a warehouse, that we do things, it's very small scale. One of the challenges was finding a lobster, and I call my lobster guy, finding a lobster guy that would process my tails for me the way I needed them to be processed. Because if you go up to anybody and you say, well, I want a microwave lobster, they're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And my lobster guy said the same thing. And now he can't stop eating them. He eats them like potato chips. So he's a small producer, and he makes them, he processes the tails every Monday for me. And it's just like a small restaurant. You know, we only make enough to get through the week. and then he processes again on Monday. So it's very boutique at this point.
And I would just want to tell people, if you know the term Absolutely Lobster, you can find it on Facebook. AbsolutelyLobster.com is the website. You can order the lobster tails. At one point, I think I saw that you sold on QVC.
Yes, it's been a journey. I think it was 2016 or 17. I had the opportunity to work with a large company, and they really liked the product. And I was on QVC. I think I was on 4 or 5 times, and we sold out every time. And it was a really great experience. Yeah.
But things have changed. And I saw at one point you had different flavored butters. But I think you're back to right now, maybe it's because of COVID and limitations that you're just doing the basic butter, which absorbs all that lobster juiciness.
Yes.
So a question here, any plans to expand your seafood empire?
Well, it's funny that it's an empire. I have several other patents filed, and they're pretty interesting ones: shrimp, oyster, clam, yeah. So I have other products that I would love to produce. It's just finding the right partner to do that, and we're going to take it slow. Because as you said, we had 3 flavors. We were in retail, and in retail, they wanted me to have 3 different flavors. And we did that. But the more, SKUs you have, the more inventory you have to have. And I just, I wanted to go back to basics and just have 1 flavor.
We'll have the purity of the lobster shine through. I think you have other flavors. I know that you had a truffle flavor. And,
that was great.
What an interesting flavor to go along with it. But I'm back again saying I'm the purist. I just want a simple lobster. I'm going to dig through it, hands, get it all down.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So I was talking with Allison and our producer Jen earlier, and I've said this on a show earlier. It could have been way back, I think, when Sergio Vitale was on. How much do I love lobster? I swear in my will, at my memorial, it is requested to be lobster. This is no lie, folks. We love lobster. I love lobster. So let's talk about the patent process. I think one time you told me it was a surprising percentage of women versus men doing patents. What was that number?
I believe it's 3% of patents that are just women inventors. And my patent attorney told me that. And it was surprising. It was really surprising. And, now he said I'm an inventor. So I can put inventor on my resume.
Okay. So we have that down. What advice would you give to the younger you?
Oh boy. Do you have like 3 hours? No. What advice? Just keep going. Just keep going. I mean, yeah.
Okay. Best or worst piece of advice you received, or both?
In terms of
Anything. Yeah, I know we're food, but.
Well, buy it right and put it on the plate right. I think that's basically, for me, the philosophy with food. You have to buy it right and you just put it on the plate right. And that's what's important.
It's hard for people, and you go into the supermarkets, I know, and even restaurants, they say, do not get seafood on Sunday. Don't buy fish on Sunday.
I don't think that's true anymore.
Or the restaurants that it's been there, but I was curious as to your feelings on that because you had worked with it. When people are buying fish, what's the best thing to look for? Because sometimes you can't touch that fish. So what things should they look for in buying fish, fresh fish?
I think that you have to buy your fish from somebody you trust. I think that you have to develop a relationship with them. I mean, it's all about trust because it's, it's basically, it's the last hunted species that people, buy. It's not something, I mean, there is farm raised fish, but in terms of wild fish, you need to know where it came from. You have to talk to somebody and buy it from somebody that's knowledgeable about the product. So to me, that's what's most important. And my husband's in the seafood business and he's buying off boats every day. So, he knows, what they're catching, how long it takes to get from point A to point B, making sure that, the timing is right. So when you said, about fish on Sunday, he gets a lot of trucks from the Northeast on Sundays and Fridays. So it really depends on, when was that fish caught? When is it getting to your fish person? So I think those are the important questions to ask. And if it's fresh, I think, all fish is delicious.
Well, we're lucky here. I love the rockfish, and I want to tell people my father used to go out. He belonged to fishing clubs. So as a young girl, I would go fishing. So there's a group here in Baltimore, Women's Daily Post, and it's based in Baltimore, but it's a national website. And I was speaking to one of the owners, I guess, well, it's now 2 years ago, that I'd like to go on a fishing trip. So they set up a fishing trip for just women. So if you're in the Baltimore area, Women's Daily Post in September is running another fishing trip, just women. It's a Saturday afternoon. The last time we went, we got our fill of rockfish. The captain and the mate, they'll clean the fish for you. I, of course, wanted the fish heads, and I didn't want them to take it off the bone. But if anybody wants to know more about the fishing trip here off the Chesapeake Bay for women only, you can reach me at food@jmoreliving. Sorry, I digress, but.
So I have a question. When you say rockfish, do you mean wild straight bass?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because yeah. So it's like such an amazing fish. It's such a beautiful fish. It's gorgeous.
It's yummy. And my father used to, I'm not the one to do it, but you get perch and they'd fry up the fillet. And as long as he was willing to do that, it was just like butter perch. It was so good. I don't know what I'm going to eat for lunch after this. I think I have 2 more lobster tails, but I'm saving them for special occasions. The absolutely lobster. What food movie would you keep watching over and over again?
Oh, I love, this is kind of a crazy movie, but Babette's Feast was a real surprise to me. If you think about a lesson, like when you said to me, what would I tell my younger self now that you're saying that? The ending of Babette's Feast, even though it was a pretty austere movie,
right.
The ending of that was really important. When I saw that, I just said, wow. So I love that. And I love the one, what's the one with the Mexican, what's it called? When she's riding a horse. Do you remember that?
Water for Chocolate?
Yes. Like Water for Chocolate. I could watch that like every single day.
There are so many great ones. The Japanese one about making
Topolobampo, yes. Yep, that one.
That one. So many of them, but yeah. Do you collect anything? Or do you hoard anything?
I don't think I hoard any. I hoard like pieces of paper. Like I can't control it. Like all of a sudden, like I empty my, bag and then all of a sudden it's filled with paper. So I'm like, I don't know where they come from. But whenever I go travel, and I haven't traveled in a bit, I just buy little things. Like I have a hand juicer that I bought in Fettia, Turkey, or I have a spoon that I got in Spain. So I try and buy little things for the kitchen. So when I cook something, it reminds me of being there. And that's kind of it's not just one thing. They're all different things depending on where I go.
What cuisine could you not live without?
Ooh.
What cuisine?
I love Vietnamese. I could eat Vietnamese food every single day, but I'm going to also say Italian since my husband's Italian. But yeah, I love Vietnamese food. I love Southeast Asian food. It's just fresh, and you don't get overly full. Lots of fresh herbs. It smells great. Yeah, I was lucky. I went did a cooking thing in Vietnam, and it was incredible.
Really, I love when I had Vietnamese when the first shop here in Baltimore was Hung's Seafood Grill, but he was Vietnamese. That the dressing, and I do it from time to time, and I get a lot of hits on my Instagram account, folks, at Dara Cooks, is using the vermicelli, the rice noodles, and making up what I call the nak mum, which is the fish sauce, water, lime juice, some vinegar, some sambal oelek. Everybody does different variations, and shredded carrots with lettuce and cilantro and a protein, usually a shrimp. And I'm in heaven. I find Vietnamese, the flavors are very light.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I just had Thai food for lunch yesterday, which I find a little bit heavier, the curries and things of that nature. But the Vietnamese, the papaya salad.
Oh, yes, I love papaya salad.
Right. Okay, everybody, are you getting hungry yet?
I have to tell you that I went to Thailand, and the hottest thing I've ever eaten was in Thailand. And I thought that I just started sweating. It was crazy. I remember it. It was like, I didn't think it was going to be that spicy. And I just thought, whoa, I need to get through this.
Before forget everybody, just a reminder, everything about Allison is floating up her Instagram, the website, Absolutely Lobster. Next, the last question. What was your most epic culinary fail?
My most epic culinary, oh boy. I'm going to say when I was really, really little and I was trying to learn how to cook, this is like so silly. I was trying to make Jell-O, and if my sister and brother are watching this, they'll get a kick out of it. I was trying to make Jell-O with a quick set method, and I didn't read the directions, that was a big lesson for me. And I just was standing there with a bowl of ice cubes and powdered Jell-O, mixing it, and it wasn't turning into Jell-O. So that was a lesson when I was very young. Make sure you read all the directions, okay?
And especially on recipes, read it 3 times is my rule of thumb.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Yes.
Go with that. And what question didn't I ask you that I should have?
You can, do I eat a lot of seafood?
Well, your husband's in the seafood business. Let me go. Jen always has a question. What is the typical dinner for you?
Pardon me?
Hey, you come home. What do you fix for dinner? What's a typical dinner? What do you eat?
Well, that's the funny thing. I'll get on a kick, and the latest kick is I'll take like onions and celery and just all these vegetables. I'm sauteing them up, and I am buying the chicken thighs with the bones in, and then throwing them in there, searing them in a big pot, and just adding water and cooking it down. And we're doing this kind of brothy chicken dinner every night. And one night I'm doing it with rice. Another night I'm adding pasta to it. Oh, and I also put a little bit of miso paste in it to give it that umph. And, one night we might put fresh cilantro. The next night it's basil. So we've been eating it every single night for the past 5 nights. So we're still on this kick. So we get on a kick, and then that's what we'll eat for like 2 weeks straight.
So you're not eating seafood every night?
No, and that's the funny thing. I guess like the shoemakers kids, had holes in their shoes. We don't eat a lot of seafood because my husband's dealing with it all day long, and he'll come home and there'll be scales, on his pants or on the floor when he comes home. But after you're, buying it and cutting it and shipping it and packing it, sometimes he'll bring it home, but it's very rare.
Well, Allison, you and I both know we can talk because we've had conversations beforehand. I look forward to one day when we can meet in person and we can just spend as much time talking and playing with food together, because I think we have a love of certain foods that are very much in common. Everybody, do you think I like lobster? There we go. All right.
That would be great. It's been great. And I look forward to us rendezvousing in Baltimore.
Absolutely. Or who knows, maybe somewhere in Maine and getting some whole lobsters and picking them.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everybody. Alison Barshak, Absolutely Lobster. Check it out.
Thank you.
Bye. Tuning in. And next week, we're going to have a cookbook author, Beth A. Lee, known for her food blog, Oh My God, Yummy. It's a way to document her family's multicultural traditional foods. Featured in the New York Times, leads virtual food groups and tastings for foods from Jerusalem. Her new cookbook, The Essential Jewish Baking Cookbook, is out now in time for the Jewish holidays and beyond. So I look forward to having Beth, initial A. Lee, the book, if you want to get it beforehand and do some baking, babkas and things of that nature, and Shadlock, and just the Essential Jewish Baking Cookbook. All right. All shows go up immediately in video for Facebook and J More Living's webpage. If you missed any of our shows or last week's show, which was Christine Perillo of Christina Cooks, the Emmy Award-winning PBS show, dig it out of the archives. It's up on the Facebook page, and it's great. Listen to the shows. Bored on your walks, pick a show, pick a guest, go for a run, and dig into the archives. We appreciate it when you share the show with friends and family. I'm Dara Bunjon. I am the Food Enthusiast. You can reach me at food@jmoreliving.com. My social on Instagram is @DaraCooks. Give me a follow. Have a safe week. May your plates always, always remain full. I thank you for watching the show, and until next week, be safe and healthy.